Ha, gay! You need to start acting like a man. When are you gonna find a girlfriend? These are just a few of the things that kids like me were told growing up, and I still hear them to this day. I want you to imagine what it's like growing up, constantly feeling like you have to protect yourself from the world because you know that for some reason, you don't fit inside the box that society has told you to stay in. And how do you even begin to let the people who love you the most know that you are also the thing that they fear the most? This is what it was like to be me, a gay boy from Toronto with immigrant parents who sacrificed everything to give their son and the rest of their family a better life. But this is also the story of so many others. Some you may know, some you may not, and some who may never even get the chance to share their truth with the world. My name is Joseph, I'm 25, and I love to sing, drink iced coffee, watch cat videos on Instagram, and like I said, I'm gay, but not like gay, just like kind of gay. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm like super gay, but that's just a small part of who I am. I'm also a brother, a son, a friend, a barista, a speaker, and a vegetarian. And one thing that I have learned in my 25 years is that I'm proud of who I am, and I'm not going to apologize for that. But I didn't always believe that. Growing up, I got really good at hiding. Hiding from who I was, hiding from trouble. And sometimes it seemed like all I knew how to do was hide. I got so good at hiding that I even once made my parents believe that I was kidnapped while we were on a family vacation in El Salvador, which is where we're from. So if you can imagine, 4-year-old me thought that I had somehow broken the TV at our relative's house where we were staying. So I decided to hide in the garage for hours. I remember seeing my parents visibly so upset and distraught, speaking to the police, literally filing a missing child report, but I stayed hidden. And even though I could see that they loved and cared for me, I felt safest hiding. I felt like there was no better option than to just stay invisible and hope that none of this had ever even happened. And even though my sister eventually found me in that dark garage corner and my parents' worst nightmare quickly came to an end, I continued to hide for years. Being part of a Latin American family, sometimes there were certain ideals that my parents would try to instill in us for both boys and girls. Religion, family, and gender were some of the biggest parts of our culture growing up. My parents definitely had a specific plan for the type of man that they wanted me to grow up to be. So you can imagine their reaction when I came to them and told them that I had some other plans in mind. Mommy, I'm gay. Do you have anything to say about that? I want to have a conversation about this, so anything? If you say you are what you are, then I can't change that. I don't have anything to ask because I really don't know anything about that, so I don't have anything to say. Tell your father that the pupusas are ready. Well, I guess it's time to go talk to my dad. Papi, I need to tell you, I'm gay. So my dad looks into his dinner plate, takes a deep breath, and he says, look, I will always love you, and I've always raised you to follow a good path. But at the end of the day, your life is your life, and you have two choices that you can make. You can either decide to sin or not sin. Sin or not sin. Those are your two choices. To sin or not. All I can do is show you a path to heaven, but ultimately, it's your choice. I'd like to say that my dad and I had a mature conversation about religion and sexuality shortly after that, but there was definitely a lot more yelling, ending off with me slamming my bedroom door shut and listening to Lady Gaga alone for the rest of the night. I think the simplest way to describe the way that my parents reacted to my coming out was tolerant. They aren't comfortable really with my identity, but they still respect and love me. They avoid any discussion of it and choose to avoid the topic altogether. However, I think they honestly did the best that they knew how. as you become an adult, you realize that your parents are human too. They are imperfect. They don't have all the answers. Their desire for me to live by their religious values was all that they had been taught, and it's how they showed their love. This was their way of showing that they cared about me, because all that they had ever been told about LGBTQ people was that we are mentally ill, immoral, and unholy. It's a complicated relationship, but I think it's a common story for so many first-generation kids who are born to immigrant parents who just weren't exposed to LGBTQ people. And while I would love for them to be more celebratory and inclusive about my identity, I realize that this is a start, and they have come a long way. So as imperfect yet perfectly gay as I am, I decided to accept my parents for who they are as well. Because I know that they love me and they support me no matter what. But I also know that not everyone is as fortunate. I think this is the side of coming out that people don't always talk about. We come out in hopes of finding acceptance from our loved ones, but sometimes we also have to decide on if we accept them and their treatment of us as queer people. And it's not clear-cut, it's not easy, it can be messy, and it can hurt. Sometimes we accept them, and other times we need to find new sources of love and support. This is where the idea of a chosen family comes into play. In the face of rejection from legal or blood relatives, LGBTQ people have always sought support from each other and created our own support networks out of both survival and a love of community. I'm sure many of you are really familiar with the show RuPaul's Drag Race, but behind the reality show's huge success, there's another documentary that is iconic called Paris is Burning that shows the family dynamics of drag ball culture in New York City in the 1980s. This idea of drag families, or houses as they're often called, were a place for young queer youth to escape the rejection of the real world and to really experience unconditional love and support from their peers and elders who came before them. To learn to love themselves as they are and to not apologize for it. By surrounding ourselves with others who have gone through similar experiences, we find collective strength and resilience to be ourselves and to show up for those in our community who need it the most. But how do you even find support when we're in a global pandemic? Maybe you've felt alone. Maybe you felt unsafe in this time of crisis. And maybe you even feel like you've had to go back into the closet. I know I have. For a community that thrives on visibility, playfulness, and gathering together, this pandemic has not been easy. I personally have felt a disconnect from the queer community, almost as if my identity has been overshadowed by the crisis that this world is facing. And it's left me feeling lost and empty. For some, you may be forced to be spending a lot of time with people who don't necessarily understand or appreciate you for who you are. Not to mention that I've been quarantining with my parents who, as I mentioned, are not my first choice to discuss which drag queen sashayed away this week. It's almost like our entire community has just been thrown back into the closet, watching coming out videos before bed, dancing to queer music alone in the mirror, and watching all of the gayest Netflix shows out there right now. But then when you look around, there's no one to share it with. Back into the solitude of our bedrooms, but sometimes in that solitude is where we find ourselves. Some of you might be facing questions around your identity for the very first time that you now have the space to fully explore and to process. I know I've reflected on my identity and learned that we're never done learning about who we are and who we want to be. This time is difficult for many reasons, but it's also a time to reset. While we may be spending more time at home, we're also spending less time feeling the pressure of the outside world to be something that we're not. And we see that happening all around the world. Countless celebrities and public figures have come out about their sexualities and gender identities since the pandemic started. Take Elliot Page and Demi Lovato, for example. If there's anything that the pandemic has taught us, it's that literally anything can happen. And when it comes to yourself and your identity, you are the only one who gets to decide who you want to be and how you want to live your life. Funny enough, that is actually a lesson that my parents taught me. They came to Canada as refugees escaping a civil war in El Salvador, risking everything to build a better life and a new path for our family. They took matters into their own hands and they did what they had to do to feel safe. And even though they may not have been exposed to LGBTQ acceptance, their fight for self-determination is a process that I think all queer people have to go through at some point in their lives. By choosing to live the life that I want with no apologies, I've accepted who I am, I've been able to travel the world, make incredible friends, and I've had some pretty amazing job opportunities. But my journey doesn't end here, and it doesn't end for anyone trying to find themselves in a world that tells them they shouldn't exist. For any LGBTQ people listening, take your time to decide what works for you and what doesn't. Whether that's changing the way you dress, trying out new pronouns, or just finding a group of friends who accept you, or just doing whatever feels right to you in that one moment. Being queer is accepting and celebrating all of our differences. So take the time to figure out what makes you, you, and know that when we're able, there is a beautiful and loving community that's just waiting to be seen and to dance and to celebrate with all of you. Coming out, it never ends. It's a long process of sharing parts of yourself with those around you in hopes of being accepted and celebrated for who you are. And while it may be difficult, not always go as planned or as you'd hoped, just remember to always tell yourself, I am who I am, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And for those of you who want to show up as allies for the community, know that being an ally isn't just saying to someone, I accept you, to their face, but it's also showing that acceptance when they're not even in the room. So if you ever hear someone say things like, ha, gay, or you need to start acting like a man, and when are you gonna find a girlfriend? Share with them that it's not cool to make fun of or disapprove someone just because of who they are. That action will have an impact and will hopefully have a domino effect until one day there is no apologizing, only inclusion and celebration.